Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to the newest edition of Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette. This week on the show, we have martial artist Chris Adamchek. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Not too bad. I'm really excited to be here.
Good. I'm excited too. This is, I think we're going to learn a lot. Like I said, a lot of people know from the show. I try to get as many different styles as we can and people with different backgrounds just to, get to more information as they can about martial arts. So with you, let's kind of start back. I'm not sure how far back it goes. Maybe your childhood. If you can remember, maybe as a child, what was the first thing that maybe not necessarily made you want to join martial arts, but maybe where you first noticed martial arts and thought it was cool? I mean, depending on your age, I know for many people, it's the Karate Kid. For others, it's the Power Rangers, something like that, something to do with entertainment or movies. What was it for you that first kind of, opened your eyes to martial arts?
For me, it was Saturday morning cartoons, Batman. I loved Batman. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Nice.
And then my parents signed me up for karate when I was only 5. So
okay.
I was like, this is so cool. I can be like Batman and, hit and kick things and whatnot.
So do you remember then when you were 5, how long did you stay in that? And do you remember which style of karate that was?
So I first started with Wado karate, and then down the way when we moved, so that was actually when I was living in Tennessee, and then when we moved up here to Connecticut, I took to Goju-Ryu karate, and I've been with that ever since.
Wow. So how long did you end up doing karate when you were little?
I believe it was down there 3-4 years before we moved up here.
Oh, wow.
And then, so we moved up here in 2000.
Okay.
And so I've been at the same, I've been studying the same style as my main style. I mean, I've branched out and studied numerous other things, but
right.
As like my core,
so
I've stuck to Goju.
Okay. So what was it about that first style that made you like it? And then when you moved, obviously made you want to continue. What did you really enjoy about it when you were between the ages of 5 to 9?
So the school that I went to in Tennessee, they did a really good job having kids classes, engaging, because you have to always find this good balance of you want to try to teach the kids something useful, but you also have to keep their attention.
Right.
Which is, as an instructor, it can always be a challenge trying to find that balance. And one of the things that I remember that was always really fun in the class is that they were like, okay, they stopped class and they were like, all right, do as many whatever kicks all the way down the entire dojo. And I was like, okay, this is my chance. So I would always try to do the biggest running, jumping kick that I could. And usually it was a side kick. So I was always like, oh yeah. That was something that, really stood out when I was taking classes down there.
So at that age, did your instructors ever incorporate games into the curriculum and kind of disguise them as exercise? I know I've talked to some instructors who have used that technique sometimes.
We had a few games that we would play. I don't really remember any of them specifically, but we would usually have a good balance of having fun and then also, good structure.
Okay. So then when you moved then after the age of 9, was it, did your parents pick the school? I mean, how long was it before you got into Goju? And was that something that you decided and you saw, or was it more like your parents that was closer to your house, or what kind of went into that decision, if you remember at all?
So we started looking right away. We tried out a couple places. I didn't really care for one or two of them. And then from my mom's church group, she found out there was a karate instructor at the church. So she was like, oh, let's go to this guy. And I ended up sticking with it. I really loved him. He was an amazing instructor, and he basically became like a second father to me. It was pretty amazing.
Okay. And just for those who don't know just a little bit about Goju, what kind of sets it apart and makes it different from some other styles that people might be more, because that's not one as at least for regular people that maybe aren't into the martial arts world. A lot of people probably have never heard of Goju. What's something just kind of to describe that in a little bit?
Yeah. So Goju, Go means hard, Ju means soft. So it basically means the hard and soft style of karate. And the idea is that it encompasses some of the very hard, rigid aspects that you usually think of when you think of karate, but then it also has more fluid and circular motions that you typically more associate with some Chinese styles.
Okay. And so then you said you right when you got back there, so you were about 9 or 10 when you started this. How often at that age, how often were you going to class?
Pretty much all the classes during the week. I think it was like maybe 3-4 classes a week he had for the kids. So I was pretty good at going to all of those. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then I started saying he sort of became like a father to me, or a second father to me. It was pretty cool because my parents had a little bit of struggle with either paying for classes sometimes or even just getting to me for the classes because they had a hectic work schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And my instructor is actually like, you know what, I'll swing by and pick him up for a class.
That's great.
So my instructor would come by and pick me up and I would go to class with him.
That's when you know you got a keeper for an instructor there. I've met a few that like that too, and that'll go out of their way to help kids. And I know one instructor that, purposely had a van just so he could pick up kids that couldn't get a ride to class. He wanted to make sure they were there. And so that's impressive. They're far and few between, unfortunately.
Yep. That's true.
So then you said this was around 2000 and you pretty much stuck with it this whole time. Now, what was it that now when you became an adult and got a little older, what made you want to stick with that? Was it more so, was it a combination of the style? Was it more just the instructor and the relationship you had with him? Was it both?
It was definitely both. I really enjoyed my style. I really loved all the aspects of it. And again, he was just like a second father to me. I stuck with him. I was helping with some of the smaller kids' classes, and I was moving up obviously through the ranks, and it was very fulfilling. I loved it, and I loved being with him.
Nice.
He would after classes, like for example Saturdays after class, he'd be like, "Chris, I don't feel like going home yet. Do you want to go see a movie?" And I'm just like, sure. And he's like, all right, let's go see whatever movie. Or we would get like fast food afterwards, or it was just awesome.
That's great. Actually, one of my instructors, I used to do it a lot too. A bunch of us would go to movies, or we'd get together and play video games and stuff like that. So yeah, I've had the same relationship with instructors too. That's really great. So at what age did you get to the level where, because obviously at this point now in your life, you're a teacher. So at what age did you start helping teach and kind of teaching on your own a little bit?
So I got my junior black belt when I was 13. Because I had been studying 8 years at that time, and I started assisting with like the smaller kids classes, because I'm still, just a preteen, so
Mm-hmm.
it's but it's still good to like start to get that experience of, helping, almost like really cementing your learning by helping other kids walk through the same step. And then when I turned 17, I believe, I got my actual first Dan black belt, and I had a little bit more significant role in some of the teaching classes, or the kids' classes.
So what was it that drew you to teaching? I know it's not for everybody. Obviously, I've worked with a lot of black belts over the years, and some of them just they don't want to teach. Some of them are good at it. Some of them aren't. What kind of drew you to it, and made you think that was something that you might end up wanting to do for the rest of your life?
Yeah. So when I first started helping, I didn't really care for it the most. I'm like, I know how to do this technique. Why do I have to can't you why you didn't listen to teacher tell us how to do the technique? And I was like, but it grew on me. I found a lot of interesting little things like, I didn't realize, teachers always telling us to do this. I do it mostly right. But when I started teaching it, I was like, oh, all right, my foot placement is a little off, because one of the other students asked me, something. And so I started had a better appreciation for showing people. And I really fell in love with, passing on that information.
That's great. It's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say when I first started doing it, I felt like I learned my own techniques better and got a better grasp of them because I was showing them to other people. So it's kind of the same thing, which is impressive. Now, you had also mentioned before that you had branched out on some other styles. What age and at what point when you did this, did you continue training with Goju, or did you take a break from Goju and then try out other styles?
I never stopped Goju.
Okay.
I still do it to this day. It was mostly around when I turned 20-ish. Yeah, I think it was like towards the end of high school, beginning of college. I was interested in, branching out and learning more styles. So some of them self-taught, some of them under other instructors, and some of the basic ones, like, not that I studied very deeply into all of them, but just so you have a basic understanding of the stylistic aspects of,
Right.
for like Taekwondo or Tai Chi or etc. But what I started studying most of out of other things, I started studying more Krav Maga
Oh,
as
okay.
well as Kali. So those two I felt had a very significant impact on my training overall.
So is that something do you still work in any of those styles at all?
Not under anybody in particular right now, but I still practice them.
Okay.
Krav Maga is primarily the Israeli self-defense art. So I was interested in self-defense because, I don't know, I understood karate was good, and it's definitely come in handy, but I wanted more of a real world, aspect of what to do in certain situations, as well as I also started learning that Krav Maga and self-defense also encompasses, a whole lot more than just, punches and kicks and how to get out of a wrist grab or, what to do here. It, paying attention to your surroundings, noticing, people's posture, if there's a chance they could be holding a weapon. It's recognizing verbal cues of predators, the way they ask you questions, or they might try to, throw a comment out there that'll get you to respond a certain way. So there's things to, be aware of that, or how to handle sexual harassment in the workplace. And that just became very attractive to me as, a realistic, very modern day core aspect of learning how to protect yourself.
Wonderful. And then with Kali, I'm assuming that was more for the weapons you wanted that, or?
Yeah. I really wanted, karate has a little bit of weapons, we mostly think of like, bow staffs and then nunchaku, and I had worked with those, but I was like, all right, well, what about when somebody pulls a knife on me? Like, when somebody just like comes at you swinging, like, barely any technique, but just like pure raw energy. And that's kind of a fairly different thing than somebody, squaring up and fighting with you. So I really wanted to learn more about knife defense, sticks, all that sort of stuff.
So now with both of those styles that you branched off into, do you incorporate that into your training right now for your students?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We go through like everything.
Nice. So let me ask you this. And now you said that was about the age of 20 when you started doing that. At what age did you branch off and open your own school? How long did you, I'm sure you still train with your current instructor, obviously, but at what point did you branch off and kind of what led to that decision to open your own school?
So I actually opened up my own school last year. Actually a few days ago, or no, maybe a week or two ago. Yeah, it was like a week or two ago. You know how things are during quarantine era, like everything melts together.
Yep.
It was like 2 weeks ago was our 1 year anniversary. So really exciting. I branched off to focus a bit more on the self-defense and weapons aspects of martial arts, as well as my teacher is, next county owner over, and I'm working more in, this New Haven area. My teacher's down in Bridgeport. So I was like, I'm up in this area a lot, might as well try to, do something to help the community around here. And so that's why I opened up my own school so that I could do that.
I'm trying to remember when we initially talked a couple of weeks back. Did you say you're connected with a university for your school?
Yes. So I have my regular job is I'm a research assistant at Yale University.
Okay.
Which is really fun. I love it. And then being part of the university, you get like all the little like news updates on like things happening around campus, and they alert you to like when there's, oh, somebody saw a suspicious person here, or oh, somebody was robbed over here, stay away the area, or oh, this person's something was stolen if you have any information. Or so like when you read the regular news, you're more just hearing about the larger scale or the, more profile cases.
Mm-hmm.
So not necessarily that there's, a huge amount more of crime in our area, but I started noticing, hey, there's a lot of like little, things going on. So I was like, how can I help? So I started reaching out to different groups on campus and was like, hey, do you want some sort of self-defense lessons? Like I can go over a bunch of different topics. And so I started, coordinating, collaborating with different groups on campus. We have like Working Women's Network and LGBTQ affinity groups, and then there's like all the residential colleges and grad students, and there's a health center. And so like I just started coordinating with different people and started teaching some of the classes. I even talked and had discussions with the on-campus police department.
Wow.
And to coordinate efforts a little bit so that, I'm teaching within the guidelines of the university's, safety policies, that, it's that the core goal is not to really incite violence or to like make everybody a fighter who can go out there and, just take on crime on the street. That it's really more about getting through all of these encounters. So like when you're robbed, what are 2 or 3 things you can do to make the situation go more smoothly, so that you're less likely to be in danger, but you're still walking through the whole process of getting robbed rather than trying to, fully resist the robbing.
So you're not training the next vigilante Batman from your childhood, huh?
Correct. Unfortunately.
I mean, you got to think
when my private student,
right? When you were a kid, that thought had to cross your mind. I'm going to be Batman when I grow up. I mean, come on.
Yeah, right.
Just need that billionaire to buy you a bunch of toys and go fight crime at night. So, so what? Now you were teaching just some seminars and individual classes. Now, when did it become like a full-time, not full-time, but obviously an actual school on campus?
So it's not So I what's the word to use? I sort of act like a contractor for the university, teaching at different locations on campus. I still don't have a physical location for my own school yet. I do some public classes that I rent some off space. That's the right word to use. Unused hours at like a yoga studio in New Haven. So I do stuff like that, and then I have a private dojo in our basement that's pretty well fixed up, and a nice big backyard for some private students that come over and train them.
Wonderful. So like, let's say just hypothetical, someone talks to you and you maybe a parent, and you find out that they're considering getting their kids in martial arts. What are some advice or some tips you'd give them on looking for a school, looking for an instructor? Maybe not necessarily just, obviously great if they came to you or something like that, but just in general, if someone wanted advice on picking a martial arts school, what are some things you'd advise them to look for and maybe avoid?
One thing that I would suggest is, because I've noticed this a bit when I was looking around at different places and just to sort of feel out other martial arts places in the area, was I found it kind of odd that you go to certain martial arts websites and they don't really post a price. Exactly. And I just find that really off-putting, that like there's just something that you're not being upfront about. Like it's fairly simple. Here's our price, here's our classes, I see some that are like, oh, there's this whole enrollment, and it's like, can't I just come watch a class? So I would always recommend going and watching a class, or even a couple. A good instructor should have no problem with, even a few free lessons, so that you understand what you're really, really getting into and looking at. So that's another big aspect, is going and watching and seeing how instructor interacts with, the kids.
Yeah, you get a kick out of this one. I was, when I lived in California years ago, I was checking out local martial arts schools, and I actually called one because it sounded interesting, and they wouldn't even let me come watch a class. They wanted me to fill out like a 20 or 30 questionnaire and do like a background check, because what they were teaching was so secretive, the secret ancient, martial arts stuff. Like, yeah, I don't think so.
Wow.
I wish I could remember the style, but I don't for the life of me. But yeah, it was, yeah. I'm sorry, not interested.
I get that. I totally understand.
Yeah, it's
I
it's
find it so
crazy.
funny when they're like, "Oh, the ancient, this," when they act like things are, semi-mystical, and it's like, it's it's just physical techniques. Like, come on.
One of my instructors used to have an ad posted on the bulletin board in his school because it was so hilarious. He clipped out of the newspaper like in the early 90s. It was this PO box you could send like 1995 to for this like secret martial arts training thing. It was like some secret style, and it included the famous Armenian death kick, is what they called it. And it was, I was just, people would read that and coming into the school like, is this for real? We're like, I'm probably not, but it's funny. It's all about marketing, but I can imagine. And what's funny is I've actually tried Googling and I can't find anything about it. So obviously it was a scam, but it was
Yeah.
it was entertaining back then. So let me ask you this then: in your everyday life, what are some of the aspects of your martial arts training that you do use in your everyday life, or you think that have maybe helped you in your everyday life?
Well, I almost always punch doors open or like use my fist.
That's great.
Also for germs, I mean, come on. I don't want to touch all these door handles, so I'll just, boom.
That's great.
So that's on the physical side. On the, mental side, I don't know. I feel like I've always been good at, tackling the project, fairly head on and just sort of bulldozing through it a little bit. So I feel like that's one quality that I've definitely gotten is that, just keep going, work on it. Also, I'm fairly quick with my hands, so I like hands sort of stuff. So like when I'm in the lab, I'm pipetting different things, back and forth. Doesn't really have a problem with me. When I was working in retail, I had no problem like folding and like handling customer service over here, the phone, this, that. Okay, I'm like crossing arms, I'm punching and something on the computer. So that was always helpful.
Hey, definitely anything that helps. So in this day and age, why do you think it's important I mean, I've always thought, me personally, that I think martial arts should be required in schools. I think everyone at some point in their life should try it at some point. Why do you think martial arts is important for people to try?
I think it's just like one reason. There's too many reasons. I mean, coordination. Everybody should be a bit more coordinated. Just having that sense of going up against another person. You start to really you have a better realization of like, hey, this is what a person can put out. Maybe I should respect people a bit more. Because most people haven't gotten into full swinging fist fight.
Right.
And I feel like you understand what a person can dish out. So in terms of even somebody who's not very skilled, it can be surprising what somebody can dish out when they're fully enraged. So you understand that I don't know that I want to solve things without having to get to that point, because that can also be kind of as much as I'm used to fighting people, it's I don't want to go around getting in every fight I can.
Right. That actually leads to my next question. Have you ever had to use it in a real life situation?
Mildly. I had a few instances in high school. Yeah, there was one in high school. Actually, there were two in high school. Three. Wow. Is that all three? Yeah, I had a couple instances in high school. Didn't really end up being fights. I used quick, simple technique and distanced myself that pretty much solved the problem. And in one instance, right after I did my technique, I yelled out the teacher's name, "Hey, come here," and the teacher came over and it was basically all over.
That's actually not really surprising. I'm hearing that more and more people I talk to. It seems like a lot more people who study traditional martial arts. A lot of them, as a kid, they get into it maybe thinking they're going to want to use it to get in fights and beat people up. But as they progress and as they become more adept at the martial arts, the times they actually use it is they use it to avoid a fight, which is impressive.
Yeah.
So just going back a little bit to Goju, just kind of take us through, first of all, how long does a typical class last that you teach? And just kind of take us through a basic class outline. Like what would it be? What's, is there like a 15-minute workout? Is there an hour of technique? Is there a cool down or something? Like just kind of take us through a basic class and what that would entail.
Yeah, sure. So our typical karate classes are about an hour that I teach with the kids. I usually start with, warm up before class. We usually line them up. We go through our creed, help tie belts. Sometimes you spend a few minutes just on, okay, we're going to walk through the belt. You know how to tie your belt. Although I will say I've become fairly skilled at tying a belt backwards on somebody.
See, I always do it from behind. I always do it from behind. It's easier for me to stand behind, especially with the kids, because I'm taller than them, to stand behind them, because then they can see what I'm doing too. The same with, so the hands go the same way as theirs should. But I've done it both ways.
Yeah. And then we usually start with some sort of warm up, running around, some jumping jacks, basic calisthenics. The kids usually love it. I bring out a bow staff and I have them jump over the bow staff. That's like the exciting part of, the warm up. And then I typically have them all start with rollouts, rolling and falling. I feel that's a really important thing and takes kids a while to understand it. So I like to do that like every single class. They're
Cool.
used to falling down, hitting the ground. And then we'll start with some Kihon. We'll go through some basics, review, some stances, strikes, kicks, etc. Then we'll usually try to break up the class and do some partner drills, avoiding kicks, blocking, whatever, counter striking, and resetting for the kids. And then we usually do some kata, walking through their kata. And then we typically end classes with some sparring because, it's always good to end on that high note.
Right.
Really good for the little kids. So usually they'll spar up with each other, or sometimes I'll come out with the gloves and they all get excited because they know that at some point I'm going to stop being serious and it basically just becomes a free for all. Everybody attacks sensei and,
Nice. That's fun. Cool. So then just a couple more quick questions. These ones kind of a little more fun one, but if you have a favorite martial arts book, what is it?
Ooh, I did really enjoy the Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, it's really cool because it's like he did a really great job. It's like instructional, it's workout regimens, it's hand drawings, which are really neat. He has like little philosophy quotes on the side of each page, so it's like, oh, neat, I can do this, do that, so I can look at the book several times, for different reasons, which is always really fun.
And then probably the last question, do you have a favorite TV show and or martial arts movie?
Ooh, favorite TV show or martial arts?
Or both, if you have to.
Yeah. All right. So a movie, what more comes to mind is Jet Li's, what was the name of it? Fearless by Jet Li.
Great movie. Yes.
I really liked that one. He showed so many different aspects of martial arts also because he had a really large change during the movie and realizing, hey, it's not about, hurting people. And then, upholding the honor of, this is what Chinese martial arts can do. And, he had asthma as a kid, which I thought was cool because I had asthma. Well, I do have asthma. And it's amazing how martial arts is, helps that so much. Especially Goju, we have actual breathing katas, which has been really fun. And then he shows, I really love the fight scene against the big English boxer. I was like, oh, it was so cool. He, he shows all the quick movements, and then the guy does to do like a big belly flop on him, and it's like, oh no, little Jet Li is going to get squashed, and then it pans down, and he's got his elbows and knees up aimed at the opponent, which I thought was really cool. Also, I'm a smaller-ish fighter, so I like to use some of those like more crouchy elbows, knees sort of movements. Really come in handy. And when the boxer lost his footing and started falling over the edge of the ring, and Jet Li grabbed his ankle to stop him, and they make a whole big point of showing that earlier, because of the guy's big weight, one of the nails popped, and his face almost went into one of the nails, but Jet Li stopped him, and I was like, it just shows really cool aspects. And then when towards the final fight scene, his spear technique, I loved watching his spear technique. And then the fight against the Japanese competitor, it just showed so much respect, particularly when they ended up close quarter with their weapons. Jet Li was using the 3-section staff, and his opponent was using a katana, and they ended up tangled and switching weapons. And it was like, oh, okay, all right, this is interesting. And so Jet Li, he was using sword earlier. He knows how to use sword. And the Japanese guy's like, all right, this is kind of like a staff nunchuck sort of thing. And he starts swinging it a bit, and all of a sudden, bonk, he hits himself in the back of the head. Yeah. It's just like, that's all great. Right, that's kind of awesome. Like, with somebody who's not familiar, and then they respectfully traded weapons back, which I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. And then they continued fighting with so much respect. It was just,
I just remember seeing that, and I was so impressed because you just don't see 3-sectional staff in movies, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, when you mentioned the bonking the head, I remember years ago I was working with junior students on nunchaku, and one of them kept hitting himself in the head, and I came in the next day and he was practicing, and he had one of our sparring headgears on because he kept, and it was even the foam ones, but he was hitting himself in the head so often he felt the need to put headgear on. So it was kind of funny to see that, and I think he was like 7 years old or something.
Oh no.
It's great. Kids are fun. I know I get one of the first tournaments I ever went to, seeing like the 5 or 6 year olds spar, and the gloves and the shin pads went past their knees and elbows, so they really couldn't bend. So it was like just straight arms and straight legs flailing, and they fell over and couldn't get up. And it was just, you're trying not to laugh, but it was the cutest thing ever. So.
Yeah, tournaments can be a bit awkward sometimes.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, any last minute or parting words or words of wisdom you want to leave, or any? Also, if you have any links or anything that maybe some informative stuff about Goju, we can put in the show notes for people to actually click on it and check it out, that want to learn more about the style and maybe a little more about you or anything. Feel free to send those to me, and I'll get them posted in there too.
Oh yeah, great. That sounds awesome. I can definitely send you a few links. That'd be really cool.
Wonderful. Otherwise, I just want to thank you. This has been a lot of fun. It's been cool, getting to know you a little more and learning about the style you teach and a little about your background. And hey, maybe we can sit down and do it in person sometime. Who knows how long I'll keep doing this, but I used to travel a lot more, and it would have been 20 years ago, this would have been great. I used to go to tournaments all over the place, but this would have been great to do. But no, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking the time to doing this. And I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was really fun being here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.